Mark Rogers TV, always talking college football as we get you prepared for 2017 and all the teams from the Power 5 and the rest of the FBS going to camp this week. We bring in Derek Helling from Fansided to give us a little bit different perspective on some of the more weightier issues involving college athletics and in particular college football. Derek, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, sir?
I'm doing just fine. So I appreciate you coming on board because you're going to educate me and most likely my audience on a number of topics that we need to be concerned with going forward. One in particular that really catches my eye is the piece that you're putting together currently concerning the compensation for athletic directors in the Power 5 and across Division I athletics. So I'll be curious to see some of the compensation numbers and if you can give us a feel for some of your findings.
Yeah. Long and short of it is it a really good time to be an AD at Division I in the NCAA. We got 16 over the past year who made at least $1 million as far as total compensation went between their base salaries at the schools and any bonuses that they earned in their jobs. Just running down a short list of the top 10. Number 1 in the country last year was Tom George at Louisville. He was the only one whose total compensation topped $2 million. Going down from there, Kevin White at Duke, Gene Smith at The Ohio State University, Jim Phillips at Northwestern, number 4, who probably a lot of people wouldn't have pegged at number 4 just because of the on-field, on-court reputation of Northwestern, but he's up there. John Curry at Tennessee coming at 5th. And Barry Alvarez from Wisconsin, number 6. Chris Del Conte at TCU, number 7. Jeff Long at Arkansas was 8th. Jack Swarbrick from Notre Dame was number 9. And finishing up the top 10 at total compensation of $1.18 million was Kirby Hocutt from Texas Tech.
So, Derek, for as much money as these guys make, there's 16, as you say, that were compensated more than $1 million in this latest study annually. It pales in comparison to the football coaches and to a lesser extent, the basketball coaches. So the first thing that strikes me as odd, although this was very much anticipated, is that the athletic director are the coach's boss. So the athletic director runs the program, and he is officially the boss of the football coach, who makes more money typically than the athletic director. That's number 1, but no big surprise there. We already knew that the likes of Urban Meyer, Nick Saban make upwards of $7 million per year. The SEC draws a little bit more money based on the last figures that I saw than any conference in college football and athletics. The Big Ten's right there. Based on the revenue studies that I've seen, there is no comparison between the SEC and the Big Ten and the rest of college football in particular. There's a pretty drastic drop, even though the ACC, the Big 12, and the Pac-12 compete on the field. And then the other thing that comes to mind is football drives most athletic departments in terms of revenue, and then it gets kind of flipped in regards to football being a financial burden once you get to a certain degree. And you studied 180 programs, so for that bottom probably half to 2/3, something in that range, football starts to become a non-revenue sport, where, of course, in places like, we could go down the list of USC, Florida State, Ohio State, etc., it drives the whole thing. Basketball big at Kentucky and some other places, but Duke in particular, but even the football programs there, because of the ties to the large TV deals, I'm guessing even at places like Duke and Kentucky probably even drive those budgets. So it's a football-dominated scene in college athletics, and then basketball to a lesser degree, and then pretty much everything else. So those are some of the things that come to mind that make it interesting, like you say, that a Northwestern, that even a Louisville athletic director, for as big as that athletic department is, you would think the schools that I know right off the top would be the ones that would compensate the most.
Yeah, you mentioned the disparity between the SEC, the Big Ten, and even the rest of the Division I, even the rest of the Power 5. I have to put an asterisk by this statement before I make it, because information on what Lynn Swan makes at USC, and I'm drawing a blank on who Stanford's AD is right now, what he makes at Stanford, was not provided. So talking about the Pac-12, you got to mention that at USC, and information from those two schools wasn't available. But with that being said, there's no AD from the Pac-12 in either the top 10, and you had to go all the way down to number 18 before you saw somebody from the Pac-12, and that happened to be the AD at Utah was the top of the Pac-12, with the information from USC and Stanford omitted.
And what's interesting about that, Derek, is that if it comes down to winning, which it shouldn't, but it does to a large degree, we place so much emphasis on football. But if we're talking about athletic success across the board, the Pac-12 is pretty much unmatched. I know other factions of the country don't want to hear that, but the Pac-12, if you include the minor sports, the Olympic sports in particular, historically, the Pac-12 is dominant with programs like Stanford, UCLA, and the like. And the athletic directors don't show up, i.e. Stanford and USC not being included. So that taints it somewhat in regards to the numbers.
Yeah. And but as far as another interesting thing was that Ron Wellman at Wake Forest last year made almost twice what Bubba Cunningham at North Carolina did.
I can't explain that.
It's going to be a head scratcher for a lot of fans when you look at it from the angle of on-field and on-court performance of the revenue sports. But once again, there's a lot of things besides the performance of the football and the men's basketball program that athletic directors are responsible for. A lot of their compensation has to do with their tenure as well, not only in the job but with the facility. So it's an interesting topic to throw around.
So, Derek, I wouldn't even say just performance. Of course, that's the first thing that comes to mind, but even just the perceived importance placed in those programs. So, for example, the University of Texas, not very successful the last 7 or 8 years in football, not successful in the last few years in basketball, but there's still a perceived and I think it's very much real that the importance of athletics, especially with those two programs placed at the University of Texas, would trump a lot of other schools, just like the perceived importance of basketball and even football and the entire athletic performance at North Carolina would trump Wake Forest and the time and attention that they and the resources that they put into their athletic program. But then, as you mentioned, the AD makes twice as much money at Wake Forest.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. College athletics will never cease to amaze us, I believe.
Definitely. Derek Helling writes for Fansided. Please join him there. Look him up on Twitter as well, and you will get well beyond the nuts and bolts and into the deeper issues in college football and athletics in general. There's some good stuff to get you educated on what's going on legally and in terms of finances and resources around the country.